Welcome to Valuations and Succession Planning for Car Dealers, where two industry experts take a deep dive into the world of dealership valuations and the strategies that can drive growth and success. In this series, Dan Iosue, a succession planner with the Rawls Group, and Scott Womack, Senior Vice President of Mercer Capital, will cover a wide range of topics, including the fundamentals of valuations, industry trends, best practices, and common challenges faced by car dealers. Here we go.
Say always, but almost always specific to the client and the client's needs, and the key manager and the key manager's let's say appetite for some have more of an entrepreneurial appetite for ownership than others, and so some of the things that we look at is first of all, we want to be very clear with what the expectations are. We want to have those expectations, in writing. So performance expectations, the way that we're going to get into the relationship or partnership together, the way that we're going to get out of the partnership, under the ideal circumstance. So at the end of the day, or if something happens in between where, it doesn't go well for a multitude of reasons, how is that handled? So some of the specifics there would be, if we have an owner and have had an owner where they were interested in incentivizing their GMs to add some income based some performance-based income above and beyond their pay plan, as an owner, as a minority owner over a 10-year period. And the way that they felt strongly about this is they felt strongly that the GMs would buy in at book value and buy out at book value. And so really what we're talking about there is a pro rata ownership distribution, based on performance, at sort of, I guess, I don't want to say lower end, but one end of the spectrum. Of course, well, not of course, but the other end of that spectrum would be to have, and we've had clients, say, look, this manager's been with me since day one, and I would like to provide this opportunity, for them, and reward them to stay with us for another 10 years, bring them in at book value, and if they perform and hit the metrics that are expected of them, then they'll be bought out at fair market value. So now we've got, the incentive, the income incentive, as a partner on a pro rata basis, and we've got the equity, the equity appreciation, in a pretty significant way there, on the way out. And then I think the middle ground there, which is what we see more often than not, which would be, to come in at establish a fair market value, and for them to buy in at fair market value and exit at fair market value, assuming everything goes well. So those are some of the circumstances and situations that we see most often, and I'd say about half the time they're tied into some sort of specific time frame. We want to hit a hurdle there, and whether it's 10 years or 15 years. And provide an additional incentive to achieve that. And for us, from a succession standpoint, that has to do with a number of things. But one of them could be, and most often is, what I think we've mentioned in previous, episodes is, a contingency succession bridge. We want to make sure that we have someone of high caliber in place to bridge the gap between the current generation of leadership and ownership and the next generation within that family, say, who we know is not going to be ready for probably the next 10 years or so, maybe 15 years. We have to have a plan for a contingency in that circumstance. But
Dan, the two words you use beautifully there that I want to sort of expand upon, or I think I heard you say, are being clear and being intentional, right? So addressing those on the front end, in our world, to the extent there are formal buy-sell agreements drafted, being consistent with terms, to your points on book value versus fair market value, we get brought in, unfortunately for the clients, I guess fortunately for us, litigation events that we've talked about in a prior episode. A lot of those come in the form of wrongful terminations with these general managers that have been incentivized. And time again, we see that either a formal agreement wasn't drafted, there's not clarity over the terms, and so is it ambiguous about book value or fair market value? So hammering those out and sort of defining those, I would contend to the extent you can make those consistent, maybe removing the incentivization part. If somebody buys in at book value, does it make sense for them to buy out at book value or fair market value versus fair market value? But selfishly, from a valuation standpoint, even if you're talking about book value, we obviously shy away from formulas. We don't like to see, X times blue sky, because those can change over time. Even the concept of book value can be a little ambiguous from a valuation perspective. Are we just literally talking about book value of equity on a dealer financial statement, or are we talking about true book value from a valuation perspective? Auto dealer financial statements, both the balance sheet and income statement, often require what we call normalization adjustments to either earnings or assets or liabilities for valuation. So again, defining that on the front end and knowing, are we just going down to the balance sheet section that says fair market value of equity or book value of equity, or do adjustments need to factor? So I think those are all important things, because we see those sort of when they're not handled well or go poorly on the back end, and perhaps being more intentional on the front end would avoid some of those situations.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear you talk through that, Scott, and that. Yeah, we have discovered, through, living through it, I suppose, it is beyond worth the investment in every way to get as much clarity as you can on the front end, and in these agreements, really in any agreement, but in these agreements, particularly when it comes to value, and whether it's book value or fair market value. We want to have crystal clear visibility to an agreement as to what's happening, because we're never going to get it perfectly, and the water is going to be a little muddy kind of no matter what. But let's make sure that we're covering every angle that we can from that standpoint, and to really just have professionals involved. I mean, winging it does not typically work out well. You could get lucky, but the odds are not strong.
Well, and under the idea of clarity, I think having valuations done both at implementation or buy-in, and then at a triggering event or exit are important. I was fortunate, again, this doesn't happen as often for us, but worked with a family auto dealership group in the South this summer on the front end. And so we had a lot of those discussions about, how do they want it to look like? Do we want to use what standard of value? Do we want to use what level of value? So trying to make it crystal clear what we were doing, and also keep the terms consistent around the life of the agreement.
Yeah, 100% agree.
This is only one out of our 12-episode series focused on dealership valuations and the strategies that can drive growth and success. Continue listening to the series now, or come back for more. Each topic featured may want you to learn something new. Succession planning allows you to create more control over the future you envision by proactively addressing possible, probable, and potential issues impacting your goals. Do you have a question you want to discuss with an expert? Feel free to reach out directly to Dan or Scott at the email addresses listed on the screen. Valuations and succession planning for car dealers is a part of the Rawls Group's Advancing Your Business, People, and Legacy Conversation series.